Paint.net is a graphics package and it allows us to edit or create images. On the left hand side we have our toolbar, the bucket, which is our fill effect. We can choose a color if we'd like, and if we click once it will then fill the page that color. I can select a secondary color, and now what I can do is I can use the gradient fill. And if I click on the gradient fill, I can click once, which becomes just one color. But what I can do is I can click and hold, and I can then drag the gradient, and I could also use the different dots to choose where the gradients need to go to. I can use the eraser to basically erase things. And one of the other nice things is if I use the select tool, I can select something and then press delete, which is the same as erase. On the right we have our history, which allows us to undo different steps, or it allows us to redo certain steps, which becomes quite useful later on. On the left we can use a pencil or a paintbrush, which basically does the same thing. The nice thing is we have all different tools that we can use over here, which is the same as on our toolbar. And then we can also change the brush thickness. So at the moment, if I use a color, I'm going to go with yellow. If I draw once, you'll see it's very thin. But if I change the thickness, it then becomes a lot thicker. If I would now like to erase this, and I click on the eraser, and I then start erasing this, you'll notice that I'm also erasing the background as well. So a very good thing to do is to use layers. I'm going to go back until I have the clear background, and now I'm going to click on layer, add a new layer. You'll notice that I now have a second layer. So even if I now use the brush and I then do whatever I'd like to, at the end, if I click on the eraser and I erase just this little bit over here, you will notice that I don't change the background. I'm not erasing the background, because you can only work on the layer that you are currently on. Let's now take that a step further. If I click on effects, you will now notice that we have a whole range of all different kind of effects. I'm going to click on fragment, and you'll notice that although we can change the fragment count and the distance and all the rest of it, but the effect that we apply only works on the layer that we are currently on. We can use this in other ways as well. For example, I'm going to open a picture called flowers. I'm now going to use this icon, which is a magic wand. And if I click on the magic wand, I'm going to click on one of the flowers. And you'll notice that it tries to work out what you would like to select. So if I just selected this flower in the beginning, it selects just that color. So I'm going to cut that, Control and X. I'm going to add a new layer, and I'm going to paste that. I'm going to go back to the previous layer, which was your background, and I'm going to use that same magic wand, and I'm going to select all of that and cut that. And now I'm going to paste that into layer 2. And now, although if I click on the outside, it looks like exactly the same, what I can do is I can click once on background, I can click on adjustments, and if I click on black and white, it will make everything else black and white on that layer, and everything on layer 2 will remain in color. I'm going to go back to my original drawing. I'm going to click once on effects, and there are a lot of different effects you can just play around with. So for example, if I click on clouds, it will change the different scales and roughness of this. And for example, if I go to the same place and I click on the fractals, then although that looks quite neat at the moment, I can, for example, zoom that in, I can change the factor, and you can play around with a lot of other effects here as well. Unlike Google, we have to save this. To save this, we can click on File, Save As, And then we need to go to your P drive, which is your personal documents, and then choose a folder that you would like to save it in. I'm going to create a new folder called paint.net, and in there I'm going to say this as drawing 1. You will notice that at the moment we're saving this as a paint.net file, which saves it with all the different layers. If, for example, we saved this as a JPEG and I clicked on save, JPEG is only one layer. So as it says, what is the quality and the compression that you'd like to have, and if I click on OK, it will now tell me that it needs to flatten this image so that it's one layer. So remember to save it in the right place.